He was the son of an aviation pioneer and says he has always been drawn to that which is most difficult. Attracted to the military's competitive structure, he learned to fly because that was where the competition was keenest. He flew an F-86 Saberjet in Korea and recorded 2 kills. He got his doctorate in space science from MIT. His dissertation laid out the basics of orbital rendezvous and made possible much of what man has accomplished in space. 15 years later, he used those same techniques to land on the moon and return safely to Earth. In the more than 30 years since his history-making flight, he has spent most of his time not looking back, but looking forward. And what he sees in the future may be every bit as important as what he accomplished in the past. He is Edward Eugene Buzz Aldrin, and he is a legend of air power. Edward Eugene Aldrin, Jr. was born on January 20th, 1930 in Montclair, New Jersey. His mother, Marion, was the daughter of an Army chaplain. His father was a student of rocket pioneer Robert Goddard and an aide of legendary pilot and gadfly Billy Mitchell. Aldrin had 2 sisters who couldn't pronounce the word brother. They said instead, Buzzer, and the nickname stuck.
And then I went away to summer camp in Maine, starting when I was 9 years old, and I continued to go there for 2 months of every summer until I was 16. And that really taught me a lot about competitiveness and teamwork and camaraderie. And I give a lot of credit to that particular summer camp in Maine.
He was also very much the product of a sometimes stormy relationship with his father, Edward Sr. He was a brilliant man who expected much of his son. Buzz, gifted in his own right, felt that pressure nearly every day of his life.
Clearly, he loved his father a great deal. Clearly, at the same time, the father gave him expectations of performance that he felt difficult to meet. He was basically an individual who was constantly raised to believe that you had to be number one all the time and everything. And that caused him some challenges.
Buzz graduated 3rd in his class at West Point, went to flight school in San Antonio, and was one of the elite pilots tapped to fly fighters. In 1953, he went to Korea. He flew 66 combat missions in F-86s and shot down 2 MiG-15.
You know, a lot of people ask about space flight, if we're afraid or scared or fearful. It's no comparison to being in combat, where everything is unknown.
After returning from Korea, he worked his way earnestly through his Air Force career. He taught combat gunnery to new pilots, was an aide to the Dean of Faculty at the Air Force Academy, and flew F-100s in Germany. He and his partner, future astronaut Ed White, were such crack shots in the air that they represented their squadron in the annual NATO gunnery competition. In the late 1950s, everything in aeronautics was coming up space. A new word, astronaut, entered the vocabulary, and the first generation of American spacemen was recruited from the ranks of test pilots, most of whom were based at Edwards Air Force Base in California. As the Air Force tinkered with different experimental flight platforms, the Guggenheim Foundation, one of the leading charitable trusts in the world, endowed a series of academic chairs and programs designed to build scientific understanding of the basics of spaceflight. Aldrin, lacking a background in flight test, chose academics as his road to space. He applied for admission to MIT, his father's alma mater, and perhaps the most demanding engineering school in the world. He became one of the first students in the Guggenheim-created astronautics program, and was hard at his calculus in 1961 when President Kennedy announced that the United States would put a man on the moon by the end of the decade.
Now it is time to take longer strides. time for a great new American enterprise. Time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth.
A year later, as John Glenn orbited high above the Earth, Aldrin laid down the theoretical basis for orbital rendezvous.
I chose a different career path. I put more emphasis on professional education. That's what my father had done, and that's what other people had done. Somehow, with the tour of combat in Korea and then the other assignments, it just didn't occur to me that I wanted my career to be dependent upon my coordinated skills as a pilot. I wanted it to be more relying on my professional knowledge and creativity. And fortunately, I chose the route that I think suited me fine, and the timing turned out to be just almost perfect.
After graduating MIT, Aldrin went to work in the Air Force Space Office. He was doing work to support the second group of astronauts, the Project Gemini astronauts, when NASA decided that all astronauts did not have to be test pilots. With his sparkling combat record and his PhD in astronautics, it was no surprise to anyone when in late 1963, Aldrin became a member of NASA's third astronaut class.